Welcome to podcast number 214. Do you know what psychological safety is? Do you know why it's important to you and your organization? Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody. We have Kaitlin and Kabri. Can you guys say hi to our audience today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so we're they're in. I think both of you are on Pacific time, so it's 6:30 right now, and I comfortably woke up at 6:45, and it's 7:30 over here where I am. But we're up bright and early this morning talking about psychological safety, and so that might not be a topic that everybody maybe immediately understands the definition of, but that's why we're going to cover it today. So I appreciate you, Kabri and Kaitlin, for coming on today. And I want to ask, first off, to get everybody connecting with us, what are you excited about in life? And then I've got a little bit of an introduction. So Kabri, can you start?
Sure. I am extremely excited about some new beginnings that are coming up in my life. The first being that my children are going back to school for the first time in a year in March, which will be a great relief on a 2-income full-time household. And they've been home since then. And the second new beginning is that I'm starting a new project after 6 years, my longest stint at another project. So very, very new.
That's awesome. Kaitlin?
First off, kudos for you to going through this pandemic with 2 kids at home. What am I excited about? I'm big into New Year's resolutions. And so this year I made a New Year's resolution to hike all of Mount Tam in the Bay Area. And so every weekend I go out and I do 8 to 14 miles. And I'm really excited to get back out this weekend. We went camping last weekend somewhere else. And this weekend I'm going to get out there because the weather's supposed to be beautiful. So
I have to look up some of my old trail runs on Mount Tam. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about psychological safety, and this topic includes just a lot of different aspects. And so we're going to mainly focus. And by the way, Kaitlin, thank you for being on the podcast again. I told you I would talk you into doing it again, and I really appreciate you doing that. So this topic, psychological safety, ties into a number of different topics in construction that we really want to cover. And I don't know if we get through all of them today, but they, in some way or another, they include parts of diversity, women in construction, safety, inclusion, diversity. So it's a really beautiful topic, and we're going to get into it today. And so I was being coached a little bit before we started the record on this podcast, and so I'm going to be vulnerable for any of you out there listening. For me, as I grew up, and I grew up with some of the same people, in some of the same areas, Kabri, that you work, right? You're in Southern California right now.
Seattle.
Yeah, you're in Seattle, but you've hung out with the Southern California group, right? How did I get that wrong? Okay, so, but anyway, I'm out there in California, so I grew up in California. Then as I traveled the United States, I really got a wider perspective of just life and cultures and diversity. And in my past, and I've talked about this in a previous podcast, I've actually gotten in trouble for bad behavior or insensitive behavior when I was younger in construction. And I remember, and I'll just be vulnerable about it, I was suspended for a month for not standing up for somebody in the room, a woman who was being talked down to by another male. And it's not an excuse. Because I needed to be educated on this. I needed to be more sensitive. But it didn't even register in my mind that I needed to say something and to defend that situation. And that month was so first of all, the uncomfortable situation that happened was horrible. That's number one. Number two, that month was one of the lowest spots of my entire life. And for a while, I hated the operations manager that I chose to hate the operations manager that suspended me. But at the end of the day, it was probably one of the most impactful things in my life. And now I consider him to have been a brave soul and somebody that I respect very much. And I appreciate what he did for me, because I don't want to take up too much time, but when I think about a safety item, whether it's at work or at church or at home, or something that deals with diversity, or something that deals with people being listened to, or any of these things, I'm more productively paranoid. My set point, my awareness is so much higher now that I'm like, wait a minute, stop. We need to think about this. And I found myself being safer and more inclusive and avoiding situations, even just like, this is a hard topic, but abuse of children when we're in church settings, or when we're around friends, or when we're in these environments. Am I attuned to these to where I will speak up and report and say something? I can say now I am, because of that situation. And so if this podcast, if previous podcasts can help in any way, shape, or form with any of the listeners to get to that point without the consequences on either side, I would consider that a blessing. So that's why it's important to me. So quite frankly, if there's any of you listeners out there that are off put, I hope that I'm not doing that to you, but please just listen today. We have some really great content, and I just appreciate your willingness, both of you, for coming on the podcast. So anything you want to say is by way of introduction before I ask you some questions? Or did I just do such a great job?
You did a great job, but thank you for speaking up and sharing the story.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for being on. So I've got some questions I really want to... Oh, the other thing that I was going to say is that this is one of the first times where I'm nervous on a podcast, simply because it's hard. Like, it's hard to talk about these things, but we're going to do it. So as we go through, if there is some discomfort or uncomfortableness, I think we need to learn how to perform in that learning zone. And so I would invite anybody listening to do that. So let's go directly to you by way of introduction, Kabri. So how long have you worked in construction? And I've got 3 more questions for you before I see if Kaitlin's got any questions for you.
Sure. I've worked in construction for over 14 years now, and that's been both on the East Coast and the West Coast.
Fantastic. What accomplishments are you most proud of? Or you can do one, or you can do a couple, but what are you most proud of?
I am most proud of my position as a superintendent. I've had the great opportunity to work on a series of very high-risk aviation and higher education projects over the course of my career, and I've gotten the reputation for being able to handle a lot of stakeholders and a lot of public risk really well, and I'm proud to manage that work.
I love that. What are you working on right now?
I am starting up a new project at the University of Washington. So I'm in pre-construction, pre-design even, and it's really amazing to see the reception of a superintendent's perspective so early in the project.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to be up in Washington here on the 1st and the 2nd. I might find out where you are and talk you into touring me through a job. I didn't pay you. So what is your, last question, then Kaitlin, I want to see if you have any questions. What is your greatest achievement outside of work?
Ooh, my greatest achievement outside of work. I mean, it'd be wrong if I didn't say my children, right? They're alive. They've lasted a year at home with us, and they're excited to get out of the house too. So I'll say keeping my children alive over the last year, while homebound for them, has been my greatest achievement so far.
Love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. Kaitlin, any questions for her?
There's one question I would have, because I'd love to know. What advice would you give to a young upcoming superintendent?
Oof. You need to listen more than you talk. You need to leverage the relationships that you are building with all of your trade partners and your peers so that you can get that information. I was once accused of caring too much about the drama on my crews, but it turns out that building good relationships makes for more production, and also a greater understanding of what the value is to that trade partner. So stop talking, listen, learn, and build relationships.
Awesome.
I like that. And what I've found, that was too good not to follow up on. What I found is there's always an answer there. whether it's we're helping the salty superintendent and she or he has a concerns, or the foreman or the workers. They're not just drama for the sake of having drama. They actually have an environment and concerns that can be fixed, right? So I love that. That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask both of you. Kaitlin, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll go to Kabri. Where do you can either answer this, you can answer it however you want, but where do you see us being in 5 years' time in construction? So on the podcast, I get asked that a lot. What's changing in the industry? What's going to be happening in the next 5 years? Or where do you think we need to head? So where will we be, or where should we be in 5 years' time?
Well, first, if you think backwards 5 years where we were and how far we've come in the last 5 years, I think we're going to make big jumps in the next five. When it comes to diversity in the field, I think we're going to see a larger group of diversified people entering into the field, also in the alpha side of things. But I think we're going to see a lot more young women who have decided, I can do this. There's more mentors. There's more people to look up to right now. When I first came into the field, I didn't know any female superintendents. And so I didn't have a person that I was aspiring to be. I just saw these men that I wanted to be part of. I wanted to be part of this group. And now I think there's people realize that women can go out there and they can be part of the industry. They belong here. And I really do think that we're going to see not just women, but minorities and different cultures and genders, and everything's going to be changing in the next 5 years.
I love that. Kabri.
Yeah, along with that, there's going to be a renewed interest in the skilled trades. I mean, there's going to be a higher need for it with the state of spending on college educations and the options that are available. And to the point of having more mentors and visual representations, there's more excitement. I see it working with pre-apprenticeship programs and talking to high schoolers. There's a desire and a need for a different route to succeed. And the skilled trades are that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope that's true. I hope what both of you said is true. And it just, I'm sure you already know this, but I came up through the trades, and I did not go to college, right? And I've had a fantastic career in construction. In fact, last night, I work with a foster care organization, and we make backpacks and bags, welcome kits for these foster care kids, and we're going to turn that into, now we're going to be doing boot camps for them, teaching life skills. And so we have somebody that helps them get their GED and then teaches life skills. And I'm like, come to construction, we'll if you have the hard work, the discipline, listening, some of these basic skills, you can have a career making 50,000, or after 16 years 250,000. Like, it's such a broad, wonderful career path. I love that. So we're going to get right into our podcast today. There's so much to talk about. The conflict, and the reason that I talk about the conflict for everybody listening is that there's a gap. And I read a book once called Own the Gap, and it said, where do we want to be? Where are we now? If we don't see what that gap is, then we can't be doing our little 20-mile march to get where we want to be. So I like to always start with that. And then Patrick Lencioni always talks about starting with conflict. So we in construction need to challenge parts of our culture that negatively impact our ability to embrace diversity, to hire, to retain talent, and to create a safe and welcoming environment. And it's funny, we didn't even plan that, but when you answered the question, both of you, about what's going to happen in 5 years, like, this conflict is key to that. So Kabri, I'd like it if you could introduce our topic today, psychological safety. And then as we do this, let's just get a dialogue going, some conversation. I'll give you some follow-up questions as we go. Can we do that, Kabri?
Yep. No, that sounds great. I'm going to sell you on it. I'm going to tell you why psychological safety is important to field management and important to any organization looking to perform at high expectations within the industry. Because think of psychological safety as a measurement or a concept of fear. It's been kind of a keyword in the realms of organizational management and development and technology terms. If you listen to TED Talks, you might have heard the topic. And I find there's a great applicability to construction. So when people have psychological safety at work, they feel comfortable making mistakes or asking questions without feeling like they're going to be embarrassed or that there's going to be a consequence. So if you think about our crews, if they are burdened by fear in what they're doing each day, then we're losing team buy-in to the plan that has to happen over the course of the day. So that impacts innovation, production, physical safety. And then there's the outward sentiment of what the construction industry culture embodies, how people feel coming to work and feel going home.
I absolutely love that. Kaitlin, any thoughts from you?
I'm more interested in hearing about Kabri, your side of things. I feel like you've done so much research and you've spoken so well about this in the past that it's so true that when you're on a job site, the psychological safety is so important to a project success. We so commonly think about schedule and budget. We forget about safety, and not just physical safety, but psychological safety as well.
And the great part about psychological safety is it improves the budget and the schedule considerations because people are wanting to put the work in place in the best way they can. They're able to choose the safest action. I tell people I used to work night shift for 3 years, and they're like, how did you get them to do that much? And I'm like, I didn't do anything. I brought in muffins and I talked to them on the work break, and they're like, oh, that's such like a girl thing to do. I'm like, no. Do you see what they produced, what they're capable of producing, how amazing this crew is? Yeah. And it's just making people want to work.
The power of thank you goes so far in the field, and it's just not said nearly enough.
Yeah. And so Paul Akers, that reminds me of something Paul Akers said, that you want total participation. When we talk about lean, people pick up on continuous improvement, eliminating waste, but he's like, there's one key concept: total participation. No, everybody. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Kabri, because one of the best things that I've ever done in my career as a superintendent is morning worker huddles, gathering everybody on the project site. And that was, I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it. I'm just saying this is when I picked up on some of the same things. Where I would gather them for 5 or 10 minutes, ask, hey, what do you need? Teach, talk about what is going on for that day, and we created a little social group. And so I started recommending that to other superintendents, company-wide, and I still encourage that. But if you have a superintendent that doesn't connect emotionally, it almost makes it worse. Meaning, if they don't feel safe, then it's just an extension of a dictatorship or an unsafe environment. And so I had never realized really until right now. So kudos to you guys, you all, for tipping me off to this, because I'm like, how do we leverage this meeting? And it really comes down to that safety. So brilliant. Already we're winning on the podcast. What else, Kabri?
I think it's important to understand the intentionality of what you just spoke about. It's not just about having soft skills, which has been a great focus of the last 10 to 15 years in the industry. It's not just about leadership skills, which is another great focus. It's about being intentional about understanding what impacts your crew, which requires building those relationships. Because psychological safety is more than just talking at a meeting, as an example, though those are great. It's understanding how the person needs to be supported or is impacted by mental health. It's understanding that there's sometimes blurred lines for a whole person between what's going on at home and what's going on at work. And there's been a question about what's our responsibility as a contractor, as a superintendent, to support that person. And my answer is, if that person is distracted by something that's going on outside of work, or they're distracted by the fear that they're the apprentice that's getting comments all day long about their gender or their nationality or their religion, then they're not able to focus on the task, and they are a hazard for the entire crew. Don't get rid of them. That's not what I mean by they're a hazard. Because you need to do something to get them to be part of the team and feel safe about asking what that task is.
It's the impact that morale can have on a job site. And things can quickly spiral out of control. And so situations like that, how do you bring morale up? How do you get more people involved and create that you need to create a team. It's not subcontractors and the GCs up here. It's the entire team as one, and making that a culture on your job sites.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And the other thing, one thing that comes to my mind as I'm listening to you is it costs us nothing to do that. Some of the follow-up questions that I have is, what are some things that we can be aware of? And we can answer these, as we go. What are some things that we can do to create this environment? But when I listen to you say, if somebody has a different nationality, or they might be a different gender, or whatever, the infinite number of things that somebody could be to be different, it just costs us nothing to be kind and inclusive. I'm just thinking about that, and I don't want to be too critical of school when I say this, but some of the social groups, or I'm going to even say a gang involvement, or these groups where we feel like we have to bully people or elevate ourselves above others, like those are gone. We're in a professional environment and we need to act that way. And it doesn't cost us anything to act appropriately. So I love that.
I'd like to challenge that a little bit and
Go
take
ahead.
it to another level. So there's acting appropriately, but what if you don't know what that means? As a manager, I think it is your first responsibility to understand what impacts your people, right? Superintendents, we scan the field for risk every morning, and that's also the attitudes or the performance of our people. If you're not actively seeking out education or to understand the different perspectives of people, so that's what is racism? What is sexism? How would that person feel? What is transphobia? What is homophobia? Why should you spend the time thinking about this? Because your people belong to these groups. And anything you can do to support your people pays back in their performance.
I really appreciate that. So it was Black History Month, and at church I was like, we need to do something, especially because this isn't talked about a lot in some church settings, right? And I was just feeling out some people that really have a passion for that. And one of the bit of advice they gave me was, don't go ask an organization that focuses on this, or one of your friends, to go do the research for you. That's insulting. That she had actually gotten a comment, well, I'm not your worker, I'm not your slave, I'm not going to go do this for you. This is just a continuation of the things that we're talking about. Go do your own research and get educated. And I thought that it is our responsibility, and people are important enough to do that. So I appreciate that. Okay, let's keep this topic going. What things should we be? What other consider? So if I had to, what I'm going to ask you here in a minute, what things can we actively do? What other things, by way of philosophy or concept or principle, do we need to know about this topic so that we can get to answering that question?
I'll throw this out there because I think that Kaitlin and the information she shared about her application in her last podcast really applies. So we have all these systems in place in the field, right? We have our toolbox talks and our JHAs or STAs, the plans we put in place for each task. We have our job-wide safety meetings. We have our job site safety plans. Do yours address mental health? And the reason I ask that is because that is an easy and actionable thing to talk about. COVID hits. Have you talked about anxiety for people balancing what that does to their professional and personal life? Have you tried to overcome the stigma that is in the industry, this historic stigma and culture that we need to be macho, and that talking about feelings is a problem when they can in fact impact the health of your crew? And Kaitlin, I'd love to hear how you've seen that captured in your experience talking with other superintendents.
It's funny. I feel like there's still such this macho, overarching feeling that, you're out in the field, you got to be strong. You got to there's the whole stereotype of like, I just see people sitting there and they look grumpy. They just sit there with their arms crossed. They don't want to share. And that's in a group setting, but you get them one-on-one and everyone's willing to open up as long as you ask the question. And so on the job site, for me, I say good morning to every single person that I walk by. I want them to be seen. I want them to know that they're heard. When I ask them how they're doing, how their weekend was, I'm not asking just to be polite. I actually care. And I think we need to change the mindset of the stereotypes from construction into like, we're all just human. We're people. How do we interact with each other? And it's not just this old school mentality anymore.
Yeah, I held small group discussions on my job site. We had about 300 skilled tradesmen and women, and we had small group sessions with each crew to talk about suicide. And it was a topic that had never been talked about on our site or any others that I had been speaking to. And I put out the statistics. The construction industry in the United States has the second worst rate of suicide. And when people saw those statistics, there was some grumbling and like, why are we talking about this? And then I asked, how many of you in the room know somebody who has died by suicide? And almost every hand went up in every small group. And talking about how the industry itself has risk factors, whether it's seasonal work or the inability to get to any therapy sessions because of our work hours and our unwillingness to talk about the need, or it's our production-driven mentality, or our foremen that are promoted because they're producers and not because they know how to be leaders and have to shoulder that responsibility. Just talking through it, saying the word suicide in a job site meeting makes it normalized. You don't need to do anything else. There are incredible resources with already published toolbox talks on the internet. The Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. Go print them out, put a poster on the wall. There's ways you can implement it right now that's pretty low key and short and right to the point for the field.
I like what you said. Most of these, and I've actually got to repent here a little bit, because the macho image, I've associated that for me excuse me, to fear. And I think it still is that, but I've finally realized where it comes from. I think a little bit better, meaning if we're macho and we're doing this, right, we're just closing off because we have a fear of vulnerability. But then how many times have they gone to a project, and I'm realizing this for myself, how many times have they gone to a project and been abused, mistreated, put into horrible situations, not listened to, talked down to? And as I was listening to what you were saying, I do remember times where we've had conversations, not about suicide, I wish I had, but about other topics where they do open up, where they sense that it's a safe environment. And so then you do get the participation and people speak out. And so now when I think about what you're talking about, Kaitlin, that there is that, grumpy mentality, how can we get through those walls and open the situation up? And that's why, so a little light bulb goes on for me, that's why psychological safety is so huge, because now you're going together. Now you have that total participation and caring for people. Because you're right, Kabri, I know of at least 3 people that have committed suicide in the last 8 months. And even though COVID-19 is a real pandemic, that's a pandemic in and of itself. The difficulties that we have with mental illness or with depression. So I love what you said there. Keep going. Anything else?
Well, I'll make a quick statement on, you asked for actionable things that you can do right now. Challenge yourself to not say committed suicide. It perpetuates a false understanding that the person was weak or chose to do something that they shouldn't have done. Obviously, suicide is a terrible choice that is made, but to that person, it's one that has to be made because they feel themselves to be such a burden on the people around them. So it goes back to that macho mentality. That person was weak. They decided to do something that's now done all this hurt. So you can say died by suicide.
I really like that. And I think you just modeled perfectly how to do it. So I don't feel, meaning to how to speak up and to change our vocabulary, right? I don't feel at all, because I said committed suicide, I think, right? Anyway, so I don't feel at all bad for that, because now I have new vocabulary. And I remember going to a Tony Robbins event, and he said there's 3 things that change your state that could bring you success. One is your physiology, one is your focus, and the other one is that the words you use. And I think we underestimate the words well, maybe you don't, but so many of us underestimate the words that we use. And so I've been saying, no, don't call them subcontractor. They're our trade partners, because they really are our partners, right? And so died by suicide, that's just another tool in our tool belt. So when people out there, and I'm saying this, podcast listeners, to help, we're like, oh, all these, talking about different genders and this and that, and why should we have to do that? Well, the words that we use do matter. It ties into our performance, not just our performance, but the focus, physiology, and language, right, of the people that we're dealing with, and it affects them and their ability to perform as close to 100% as possible, which is a point that you all taught me about on this podcast, which I appreciate. Would we rather have our people focused, alert, and aware at closer to 100% or not? Do we want to keep them safe or not? And if we want to do these things, then we will have that safety. I love that. I feel like I've interrupted. Go ahead if you had something, Kaitlin, that you wanted to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, we forget to ask how often, we talk to people about safety and what hazards are associated with the work that they're doing for today, but we forget to ask, how much pressure are you under? What pressures are you feeling today? Like, it may be pressures from home. It may be scheduled deadlines that they feel like they need to hit. That may be unrealistic. We may be setting unrealistic expectations for them, and it's adding pressure to them. And how is that impacting them and their crews? We don't constantly think about that. We set these deadlines, and how is that impacting them? And we don't typically ask.
And it's the job, I'm talking too much, but it's the job of the foreman and the superintendents to know that. And just to speak passionately about it. And I'm glad that I have these additional tools. Katie and I were reading a book, I think it's called Happy Parents, Happy Kids. Anyway, the model is, before you correct your child, and well, you can correct them whenever you want, but to be effective, before you correct your child, you need to control your own emotions, connect, right? And then you can go in and do some coaching. Instead of the criticism where they shut down, they wall off, right? The first thing is always connection. And then you read books like Leadership and Self-Deception, which is a great book that I give to superintendents about how to make sure that they're dealing with stressful situations. It always starts with connection. Right? So for foremen, for lead persons, and for superintendents, let's make sure we have that connection. The only other thing I would say is, and you've given me more tools to do this, so I'm totally, unless this is copyrighted, I'm totally going to steal this. But I always say in an orientation, it's not, did we give them the orientation check, right? It's, did they understand the orientation? Are they ready to go? And so some people have come up to all of us in our careers, I'm not sure that person understands this. I don't know that they get it. I did the orientation. I'm like, well, language isn't a protected class. How they're feeling isn't a protected class. Whether or not they're in the moment isn't a protected class. Let's go care and find out what's going on and do that connection. It's our job to make sure that they understood the orientation, that they're ready to go to work today. And I think it's powerful when a superintendent or anybody on the project site says, no, it's not just to check the box. I know for a fact through connecting with the people that work with me that they're ready to go to work and they're able to be safe. And what you just talked about, like I said, I'm totally stealing it. I'm going to put it in books and stuff, but is a sure pathway to get there from what I just heard.
I think both of you have just related the values of applying concepts that support psychological safety to an individual, but you both also mentioned the other trades on site. Now, here's probably a very familiar example. You have your drywaller and maybe your custom finishes foreman, and you're trying to bring them together to find a solution for something they need to install. And when they first get together, there's the grumbling, there's the I need this, I need that. But you've built a relationship enough with each of them to know that that person's grumbling because they can't get material within the next week. And that person's grumbling because two of their people are homesick. Okay, so knowing and pulling those relationships together and talking through and making their connection on why each of them are frustrated, then they start problem solving. Oh, there is nothing more beautiful in the world when you bring two different trades together and they start problem solving, because they want nothing more than to be creative and proud of their work, right? That's our commonality in the industry. you can tap into that and people go home happy. They walk away from that feeling that they felt that they got something out of it, that they won, that they were heard.
Love it. Well, I'm wondering if we're at a point where we can get to actionable steps. And here's what I'd like to do, because I really want to make sure that this flows and do a good job on my part of facilitating. So I'd like Kabri to ask you, what are some actionable things? So for instance, you already said it's our job as managers to get educated. And it's just like, well, that's actually about it. I was going to say it's just like with the law. Everybody has a burden to know the law. That's probably not a great example, but it's our job to know about these things because, real quick story. I was doing a purpose statement and some organizational health consulting with a company the other day, and I did this exercise that Dean Graziosi recommends. It's not asking questions asking why 5 times like we do in Lean, but it's ask why 7 times to get to why is this person in business. And it was funny, the person I was talking to is a consultant in construction and does some pretty neat things, but at the end of the 7 whys, it was to build people and families. And I thought that was a really neat thing. And so when I'm talking to him, he's like, no, that can't be it. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, the way you talk, the way you act, you just told somebody, hey, it's 4 o'clock, it's time for you to start packing up. Everything about you is about protecting people and families. And so I would bet if most of us asked why 7 times, I bet you under all the layers, people and families are somewhere in there. And so that's our motivation. That's our why, to get educated on these things, to create this kind of safety. What I'd like to do is, and Kaitlin, I can either go back and forth between the two of you, or Kaitlin, you can just say, hey, I'm enjoying this so much, I'll raise my hand, whatever you want to do. But I would like to know, what are some actionable steps that builds on your admonition, your challenge, your invitation for managers to really get educated and on some of these topics. So would you be open to doing that, Kabri? Okay, so let's start with you. What other actionable steps can we take?
Okay. For understanding a person's potential mental health concerns and being a manager that they can approach with those concerns, go find out what your healthcare coverage is for your organization or for union. Go find out what resources currently exist. See if they have an EAP, an employee assistance program, which is kind of an addendum to typical medical health insurance, where they can find resources. And then go to preventconstructionsuicide.com and go grab a toolbox talk and add one of them to the information and see what happens.
I love that. And real quick, in case we don't hit it again, we can talk about these things. For anybody listening to the podcast, you can ask somebody, unless I'm wrong, you guys call me out, but I have heard and been trained, you can ask somebody, are you feeling okay? Are you really okay? Have you had thoughts of suicide? It doesn't encourage somebody to commit suicide by asking the question. It brings it out in the open and possibly has an opportunity, gives an opportunity for them to speak out. Because I like what you said, Kabri. Usually they're not deciding, I want to kill myself. They're saying people would be better off without me, or the situation is hopeless. I think that was a beautiful message. Kaitlin, anything that you would challenge us with? What about a next step?
Put yourself out there, put yourself to have these difficult conversations with your crew, with your team, and see what comes out of it. See what conversation you can spike. The first time might be rough. It might be a little bumpy, but the more you practice this, the more you have these conversations, the easier they're going to become. And this is how we're going to slowly start to change the industry and make this more accepted.
Absolutely. And to prove that, I've learned, maybe you all have too, maybe you have too, Kaitlin, like I've learned more vocabulary and more skills. When I leave this podcast, I will be better able to talk about this further. I love this. Kabri, and we'll go until you're like, nope, I think that's enough for everybody. What other actionable steps would you have?
I know we're all very busy. Go find a pre-apprenticeship program, a high school program, your kid's kindergarten class, which I did 2 weeks ago, and talk about what you do. I mean, we're not in this industry generally because we love working such long hours or whatever other hardships there are. There's a passion behind it. Just go show people that it's an option. Talk about what you love.
That's so true. I don't think nearly enough, especially females, know that construction's not just swinging a hammer. I'm not dropping doors, framing walls all day long when I say that I work in construction. I honestly think there's a stigma when I tell people that I work in construction. I think they think I stand there and hold a stop sign. Like that's what I envision what people think of me. And it's not at all true. We need to change that mentality of what working in construction is because there's so much innovation that's gone into it in the last decade.
And it's such a wonderful career. It's so fun. And the money's a secondary consideration, but I tell people all the time, after 16 years, and I remember when Hensel Phelps did this, there was a PowerPoint. Do you remember that, Kabri, where it was like, by the time a project manager is in the industry after 16 years, when you add this to plus the benefits plus the stock, you're like well above $260,000 a year, and some emergency room doctors make $199. And I'm not criticizing emergency room doctor, but it's like, I had people tell me, even young males, I don't want to go into construction. I'm going to go get my, a degree and become an electrical engineer or something like that. I want to make real money and not have to work. And I'm like, okay, well, the electrical engineers I know make $85,000 a year, and they work over the weekends, and they're not doing cool things like that. So it's like, and this might be a good point to talk about this because I was stumbling through this and doing this the wrong way. I'm going to reflect on this, but I'm like, we need to hire minorities. We need to hire more women. And you gave me, I don't want to speak for you, but perhaps that was maybe the wrong way to go about it. But at the end of the day, I've shared, and I think I shared this with you. I've read numerous books that have done where they have done studies, and for one notable one was in a hospital. You take, and I'm a white male, I'm not criticizing white males, but you take all white male doctors, put them on a team, male and female doctors, put them on a team, and you take male and female doctors of different ethnicities, different races, put them on a team, and then you do that same thing, but also add in janitors and nurses and administrative staff. And guess which team always wins the exercise? Like always wins the exercise. It's the most diverse team. And so if somebody was going to be selfish, which God forbid you are if you're listening to this, if you're a president of a company or whatever, it just even makes sense financially to have a more diverse group. But for me, I think every time we see, and you would call me out for this, I bet, but like when we see our industry doing better with diversity, inviting people and creating that environment, I would encourage us to celebrate it, but also probably not do it in the wrong way. So I'm wondering if you could coach us. For people like me, I'm a white male. I want to talk about it. It's important. It's affected me personally. I have girls. I have 4 wonderful daughters that I want to be an example and a role model to. You already said, how can we, speak about it and don't be afraid. But what are some appropriate ways to intentionally encourage this and the elevation of women and minorities and protected classes in construction, knowing that we need them and that they could have a wonderful experience with us? Any advice there as we have those conversations?
You want to go, Kaitlin? Sorry.
Okay, I go by Katie as well. I think it has a lot to do with giving women and minorities the opportunity. That's how I got where I am. Someone saw that, I had this drive and they gave me the opportunity. But there may be some people that are more reserved and, they're not going to put their neck out there. They may not want to be in that spotlight, and just making sure that they know that opportunity is there for them if they want it. Some people may not want the opportunity. They may want to sit on the sidelines, or they may not want to shine, but let them know that, hey, if this is what you want, I want to help you get there.
I'll clarify some of the conversation you were referring to about intentionality. I think there is a place for intentional hiring of female and minorities. It will fail if it does not come from an organization that intends to change and support a culture that will support those people. It will fail if it's communicated as checking a box and there's not additional self-reflection that comes along with it. It'll fail if your managers aren't all in line with the reason you're organization is looking to intentionally hire. Intentional hiring, I see like a skill set. There are certain people that have different skill sets that serve different values within our organization. I might work for an owner that it really makes sense to put a certain person in project management, and I might go look to hire that person. And when we think about how we can encourage the participation of females and minorities as a field manager, I go to pre-apprenticeship programs. I work through local organizations to volunteer to talk to high school students so that they know about the opportunity. Like Kaitlin was saying, like you need to put yourself out there to find the people that might fit. We're so stuck right now, I think, on having CM degrees. It has nothing to do with a CM degree. We know you don't learn things there that apply with 10 years of experience, right? I was told when I got hired that you know nothing and you will learn it throughout the course of your career. And that was super frustrating, but very true. So being able to put yourself in a position to look elsewhere and make sure that our industry can still flex beyond that mentality of having very specific hiring protocols will help.
I love that. Were there any other next steps that you wanted to mention before we do our closing statements, either of you? Okay. Well, then we're at a good spot. I've really enjoyed this podcast because I enjoy progress towards helping people. At the end of the day, so on the Myers-Briggs test, to show some authenticity, I'm an ENFJ. Literally what it says on my personality profile is bringing out the best in others. And so I usually am the one that makes people uncomfortable, especially at boot camps and trainings and things like that. But this is me and I love it. And this has been a payday for me. So, and I really hope that everyone listening has taken this seriously, because two things, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I'm practicing. This is our reality. The construction industry in our world is going to get more inclusive. Our world is going to leverage diversity. Our world needs to protect people. And I will say it, so this will be my closing statement, then I'd like to go to you, Kabri, and then I'd like to go to you, Kaitlin. What would you challenge people? What is the gap, or what final comments did you have? There isn't a week that goes by where I don't see and have to correct something that's going wrong with safety, with quality, I'll just mention it, or somebody who isn't being listened to and has a serious concern, or where the innocent need to be protected and people aren't speaking up or listening well enough. So I really like that we started this out with listening. We have a problem with that in the United States. Maybe, and you guys you all can correct me if I've said that wrong, but I just don't know that we're as accountable as we need to be. And it's hurting ourselves and other people. And so as we all have these conversations and are more aware and have the focus of listening to keep people safe, I think we're going to do remarkable things. And not only is it just an eventuality in our world that we're getting closer and closer to that, but I just feel like transparent environments and environments that are inclusive and safe and healthy are places where I want to work. When I used to be siloed, oh, it's my opinion, it's my schedule, oh, I don't want to talk about that, tell them they're just being stubborn, like, that's just gross. That's just like a dark, not good way to live. And I don't know a better way to explain it, but as soon as, and I've been culturally trained now to be transparent and to embrace these types of things, and to be able to say, hey, if you believe in this, let's celebrate that. If you're homosexual, tell me. Let's celebrate that. Like we're all here together. I'm going to tell you about my 11 kids and the hobbies that I deal with. Let's all understand and know each other. Since that has happened in my life, the amount of happiness has been exponential. And so if it's been that exponential for me, I can't help but feel that it's exponential for others. And so that's my closing statement. At the end of the day, hatred, this is my last thing I'll say, hatred and non-inclusion and anger and a lack of acceptance and discrimination and prejudice and sexism have no place when it comes to serving others being inclusive with others, and how we deal with people. It's not the way to be, and it has no place in our industry and on our projects and in our minds. And so this podcast is an opportunity for us to purge those things before it affects somebody else and affects ourselves. So, Kabri, what would be your closing statement or challenge for our listeners?
And you just made me want to talk for another hour, though. I have so many points that I want to address, but I'll echo and extend some similar sentiments. As a field manager, I understand that the greatest resource I have is my people and the people around me. And I don't want the topic of psychological safety to feel like the onus is all on the manager. You are creating an environment where people can bring in themselves. You're not creating a perfect environment that makes everyone happy. I mean, to be clear, you said, people have their different backgrounds. Let them tell you. It's not about you saying, oh, you need to bring your personal life to work. It's that the person feels free to say that they have a challenge, personal or professional, and that they're open to talking about that, which makes the whole crew interact better. So onus is not on you to make a perfect environment. It is on you to be willing to relate to your people by opening up the floor for conversation.
I like that. Kaitlin, no pressure. No pressure. We're all watching.
I feel like I have big shoes to fall. I guess I would end with, even though we've seen the industry grow and change in the last 5 years, in the last decade, and become much more inclusive, in the next 5 and the next 10, we're going to see a change and continue to go that direction, hopefully, but we're still not there. We're still always going to have to work at this. We're still going to have to, keep our head up, look forward, and know that we're going to need to work on this. So when you hire young females or females in general, or a diverse group of people, don't check that box and just be like, yep, I'm good, I'm done. How do we continue these conversations, and how do we grow these people? Because if they see leadership buying into this, and they see leadership putting the energy into growing and developing people, not just the white male, that's how you keep people. That's how you make people happy, and how you continue to change the industry.
Yeah. And I heard somebody say one time, wouldn't it be great if when somebody asked you how you're doing, if they actually cared to listen? When we are helping and hiring and doing these things, wouldn't it be great if we actually cared and continued to listen, right? I love that. Thank you all so much for being on the podcast today. We've got a little bit of a tradition. On we go is something that I say on all the podcasts because our journey isn't complete. There's so much more out there. So on the count of 3, let's say it together. You guys good for this? Okay. 1, 2, 3. On we go.
On we go.
Thank you all very much.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.